Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Lunching with the League. We've got a jam-packed show for you today. First, we do want to announce that we do have closed captioning available for everyone joining us today. You simply click on that CC icon that you see at the bottom of your screen. You should immediately see a live transcript pop up at the bottom. And before we get started, we do want to announce a couple of upcoming events. The first is on Wednesday, July 14th, just a couple of days from now, and it's the Fair Districts Coalition All Volunteer Huddle. And that is co-hosted by Fair Districts Ohio, and it kicks off at 6 o'clock. Michael Barron here will be dropping a link for that in the chat. And then our next upcoming Lunching with the League, we will be hosting Ohio Supreme Court Justice Maureen O'Connor. You definitely do not want to miss that. And that will be Monday on August 9th, again at noon. Just a couple of reminders that we do have this phenomenal group, Youth in Action. This is our youth leadership group for activism for young leaders, and we do invite all participants 13 through 25 years old. And it's an empowering space for young leaders to learn how to advocate for democracy and social justice issues that are important to them. It's really a great opportunity for mentor and mentee relationship building. They learn how to coordinate and how themselves to become speakers and engage in workshops and service opportunities. There's a lot of opportunity for personal and professional growth and leadership development. Again, Michael will be dropping a link for that in the chat if you have any young people in your life that would be interested in that. And then Fair Districts Ohio, we're asking everyone interested in fair maps to double up for democracy. You can double your impact today to help support our efforts to get those representative and fair maps. Your gift for Fair Districts will be matched dollar for dollar during the entire month of July. We definitely need your support for this, so please give today to end gerrymandering districts in Ohio. Go ahead and click on that Fair Districts Ohio fairdistrictsohio.org link that you see there in your chat. And finally, we invite everyone to become a League member to help us support all issues of democracy, whether it's election rights or to end gerrymandering across Ohio, or if it's to jump on any of our social policy issues that we also advocate for today. We do have a number of local leagues across the state, so there are opportunities for everyone across Ohio to plug in where they can. All right, and now we are happy to bring you Lunching with the League. Today we have Michelle Wilcox, the director for the Auglaize County Board of Elections, and Brian Sleeth, the director of the Warren County Board of Elections, joining us today. Today's session will be moderated by Jen Miller, the executive director of the League of Ohio, and I will happily turn it over to Jen.
Thank you so much, Cynthia and Michael. What you may not know is that this is a program that was envisioned by two hardworking volunteers, and that those two are Cynthia Peoples and Michael Barron. So the one that you just heard from and the one who's putting the links in the chat. So thank you to everyone. I'm so excited to have our two panelists today. We have Brian Sleeth, who has been the director of the Warren County Board of Elections since 2009. Oops, I'm going in different order. I apologize. He is currently president of the Ohio Association of Elections Officials. He's been on the education committee of that association, as well as the legislative committee. He is a 2016 graduate of Election Center. Prior to working in elections, he worked for General Motors for 12 years. He has been married to Jennifer, such a good name, for 25 years, and has 2 children and 1 grandson. You look too young to have a grandson, Brian. And then, of course, Michelle Wilcox, who I think many of you may know, is the immediate past president of the Ohio Association of Elections Officials. She's been director of the Auglaize County Board of Elections since 2013. She has been a trustee of this board. She has worked in many different capacities. She's a 2019 graduate of the Election Center, where she sits on the Professional Education Program Board. She recently was invited to join the Auburn University Election Administration Initiative Research Advisory Board, wow, and the editorial board. She's been married to her husband, Kip, for 35 years. They have 4 children and 7 grandchildren. How wonderful. I want to ask you how you got into elections work, both of you. We'll start with you, Brian. But then I also want to ask about what the election center is, because I think a lot of our members who love democracy don't know what that is, and you both are graduates of it. Brian?
Sorry, I didn't know I got muted there. Thanks for the introduction. So what made me get into elections, it was kind of a just an odd thing. Again, part of your introduction, I worked at General Motors for quite a while, and then they closed down and then paid for my schooling. So I went completely different spectrum. I was in nursing school. I completed 2 years of nursing school. And then part of the deal was I got unemployment, helped supplement while I was going to school. And then that pretty much, they reneged on that. So I needed a job to support my family. Right place at the right time. My neighbor was a board member here, very good friend of mine at the Board of Elections, and asked me if I was interested in a job. So I started in the warehouse and was there for about a year and a half, 2 years, and then worked my way into the director spot and been here ever since. You know, I didn't see my career ever going this way, but now I look back on it, I couldn't imagine anything else. You know, I really enjoy what I do. You know, it's really fulfilling. It's something different all the time. Not always, you know, dealing with all the different elected officials, dealing with, you know, you and, you know, just the general public. It just keeps us on his feet, and it's something I enjoy.
Thank you. And how about you, Michelle? What brought you to elections work?
Well, I don't think anybody, you know, goes to high school and says, I want to be an election official when I get older. Or maybe, you know, maybe one of the youth at the booths, but I don't even really see that. So I actually was in between jobs as well. And I grew up across from Diana Dulabon, and she was very active in the political party, which I was not. And my mom and dad, let's be honest, there's only probably 10 total of their party in our town. So I had worked, oh no, I was currently working for an attorney, and I was the office manager. So she said, you know what? I think Michelle should apply for that job. I think she'd be really good. Well, I dragged my feet. I waited till the day that the applications were due, and I brought it here in the last hour and thought, you know, I'll give it a try. Well, you know, if I get an interview, that'll be good. So then lo and behold, went through the interview process, and I actually got the job. So again, everybody was like, well, how hard could it be? You know, you teach poll school 2 times a year. My mom had been a poll worker for 40 years. So that's what side she saw. And she said, you know, you could teach classes. I was an education major, and you could teach poll school. Well, little did I know what I was getting into. I literally, when I was being trained and heard about precincts and splits, I almost walked out, but I stuck with it, and I'm so glad that I did. So that's my story.
It's an incredibly detail-oriented job. I think a lot of people don't know all the pieces and parts. So before we get into some of these other things, how would you describe your job? What, you know, what's your elevator speech in terms of what it is that an elections officials does? And I will ask you the same thing, Brian.
Okay, well, again, I think I think you and Erin kind of talked about this when I came in with the former director, and she said, oh, it's like planning a huge wedding. If you like to plan a wedding and all the pieces and parts, the caterer, the food, the you know, the venue, then you'll enjoy this. Or you'll, you know, I love to plan things. So what we do here, which I think is great, because we'll talk about Sierra here in a little bit, but in Ohio, we elections directors are in every part of the election. So not only we do oversee registration, we do the outreach, we do the education, we do the actually tabulation, we are in charge of our registration system. And then again, you know, 2 or 3 times a year, we bring that all together And then we provide the polling locations. We educate the poll workers. We make sure that everything's accessible, ADA compliant. We, bring what I say is I want the best voting opportunity for every, not just voter, because I want every citizen in Auglaize County to be registered to be able to vote in an election.
Brian?
Yeah, I did forget to answer the last half of your question earlier about the election center. And maybe you can put, some information out there, but that's ran by Auburn University, something that Michelle and I have, really been active members in. And again, it's a national association where we can go there and, they put on some really nice education programs, and it's about, networking and everything else. So then if we get, I think, 12 classes, then we can graduate and have continuing education. So sorry, I forgot to talk about that. And the next one, I just echo off of Michelle's comments there. Everybody thinks we work, once or twice a year, and, they don't realize the details that go into running the Board of Elections day in and day out. Everything from candidate filing, campaign finance. People don't even realize we do campaign finance, local liquor options, which people like, why does the Board of Elections do that? Something I question too sometimes, but yeah, again, that's the day in and day out, making sure that we keep accurate election rolls.
And what is the Ohio Association of Elections Officials? I'll ask you that, Brian, and then I'm going to ask you, Michelle, about how the president is chosen.
Sure. That is the Ohio Association of Election Officials is a bipartisan board of all 88 counties throughout the state of Ohio. We have many different committees on there, but we have a legislative committee. And we have, I forgot the most important person, Aaron Ackerman, which, most of us know. He is our executive director and basically our lobbyist. And he's out there all the time, his eyes and ears wide open, seeing what elected officials are talking about, specifically election laws, how it could affect us. And he brings that back to the membership. And then when there's bills introduced, again, he brings it back to us and, the membership, we discuss, and again, in a bipartisan way, if we support, stay neutral, don't like the idea. And then we also have trustees, a group of 20 of us. And the trustees, again, they have the final say of they get the recommendation from the legislative committee members. And again, they can take their recommendation, and that's what we give to Aaron Ackerman that he takes to the elected officials there at the state. And Michelle will talk about the other.
Yeah, I think what is really about our association, when I testify in front of legislators, I explain that this, it may not work for one or the other, but as an election officials, the legislative committee is actually 20 Republicans, 20 Democrats, and they study the bills. Some of the bills are 800 pages long. So they study the bills, and then the co-chairs of our legislative committee, which are Lavera Scott, and who's from Wood County?
Terry
Burton.
Yeah.
And they're the co-chairs, and they lead our legislative committee, and they discuss, those are hours and hours of going over these bills and, what pieces and parts do we like? And then again, like Brian said, they agree to either be an opponent, a proponent, or remain neutral. So they bring that up to the trustees, and the trustees are actually appointed by the officers. And there are 10 Republicans, 10 Democrats, and then they go over the recommendation of the legislative committees and really go through what they've already studied, and then what we like and what we don't like. And sometimes the trustees have sent it back down to the legislative committee and said, take a look at this again. Or sometimes they'd said, nah, we really we really don't feel the same right now about this. Let's try to get more provisions into the bills, which is very interesting as well. We work with the legislators, and what they do is they put out this huge bill. So then we dissect the bill as election officials and administering elections, what we like. So then we then say, you know, I really like that, but this is not going to work. So that's what Aaron's job, which God love him, of going back to the legislator and saying, they didn't like this at all. Like, they don't like this, what can we do? So again, what it means, and I think we said we'll talk about 294, what it means is thank you for bringing us to the table. Thank you, thank you. But now here are some provisions that we, as the administrators of elections, would like you to hear of what A, would make our job easier, but B, and also most importantly, be better for the accessibility for the voters. Because again, that's our number one goal.
That's great. Thank you. So, Brian, how is the president selected, and what is that job description?
It's
were
elected.
You voluntold?
Yeah, I'm second. I'm first vice right now. I'm first vice president, and then at this winter's conference, I'll become the president of the association. We have first vice, second vice, and then everybody moves up, and it's all equally divided too. There'll be a Democrat once, Republican, Democrat, Republican. So we, again, here we are. We're keeping the whole entire system, completely bipartisan and fair as we can. But yeah, we're selected by the trustees. We're nominated and then voted on by them. And then it's a 1-year position.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to say to the audience that I have benefited many times from conversations with each of these individuals, both of these individuals, as well as Aaron Ackerman, the legislative committee. One of the things about League is that we also study things deeply. We are really detail oriented too. And so I do appreciate that we continue to talk through things, right? We come from the vantage point of the voter, how the voter might interact with the electoral system. And you come from the electoral system itself, what it needs to function and function well. And so I think those different perspectives really help us, I think, better understand laws. So with that, I'm just going to jump in. I know people want to know your thoughts on HB 294. And for the audience to know, the League is what we would call neutral, or in that there are things we like and dislike. But please go ahead, jump in, either of you.
I can start there because as an association, this is something, again, that, we all have our personal beliefs, but we talk about, taking that hot hat off. And one of my best friends is my deputy director, and she happens to be of the opposite party of me. So again, we all have our different opinions or what, but then as an election official, how can we administer elections in a bipartisan way and, get the highest voter turnout? So again, the HB 294, there are pieces and parts that some of us like, some of us don't. As the association, we pick through those. So there's definitely both different opinions. But again, our association so respects each side's opinions. I'll tell you what, I will hug people and say, I am so proud of you, for maybe a motion and our jobs as officials, or the officers there, that we work through these committees as far as the ones that appoint. So our trustees are attorneys. They've had prior jobs, maybe with the NAACP. I mean, we have a good crew of people that we really look at to be the leaders of this association. So that being said, on 294, as an association, our legislative committee voted to to support it based on these changes. Well, when it came up to the trustees, we really just felt more strongly that, we wanted to see these changes. we're the ones administering elections. So my personal, and is the drop boxes. I would like the boards to be able to decide, and we use those drop boxes all year long. And in fact, if we would have a metal flap or didn't have the metal flap, ours, we're actually getting our treasurer's taxes out of there now, where, just the residents of Auglaize County just drop it off there because it's so convenient. So we still, as a bipartisan team, are checking that box every day. So needless to say, we get registrations, we get absentee ballot applications. It's very convenient. And to only have that 10 days is limiting us. It's going to make our job harder. It's so convenient. So that's one of the issues that we're working through is the drop box. And another issue that we're working through is the 10 days prior to the election for the absentee cutoff. Is it very hard for it to be that Saturday before the election? Absolutely. But we think the 10 days out is a little far. And so those are a couple of the issues that our association really wants to work with the legislators in working through. We administer the elections. And so what we feel will be more beneficial for the voters are some of those issues to be worked through. And again, I appreciate being at the table. I have colleagues in other states that things are just there on their laps without them having any input at all. So again, I've said this 100 times. I thank them so much for being included and being a stakeholder in these bills. And also, again, I always say when a bill comes out, there are so many provisions and changes that it's only the beginning. It's not the end. So that's, we take it back to our bipartisan team and we work through it. There may be a couple changes that we'll have to work through again, a give and a take. If we do this, how about this? And we do that. So that's what's really great about our association is that we're able to have this open dialogue through Aaron and discuss these bills of what we like and don't like. And there are several good things. There are several good things, which Jen, you worked on codifying the EAP. 17-year-olds, they don't have to be seniors now, they could be juniors. That is great. That opens us up to so many potential poll workers. And there are other things that are really great in the bill that we've been, wanting for years, but do some of the things that we really don't like are those, the balance. So it's a give or take. And I have actually testified quite a few times at the legislative. And again, just being respectful of the different opinions and being able to be a voice for our entire association that I don't even know. We tried to figure out the membership of what it would be because it's also the clerks, the boards, and what the membership is. I know at our association, at our yearly conventions or conference, I believe there's close to 600 to 800 people. And that's just the ones that come there. So I don't really even know the number of what our association entails. But when you try to take a leaders that the association has appointed and bring that all together, it's really a great working, and we're very lucky in the state of Ohio. And I talk and speak nationally about our association is one of the #1 in the nation.
That's awesome. Brian, is there anything you wanted to talk about in terms of 294?
Yeah, Michelle, thanks for taking about every single line item there. I am concerned about those ballot drop boxes. I'm concerned about the sponsors of the bill on their thoughts on the boxes. I'm concerned that we're not going to be able to convince them that we need boxes outside of a 10-day window, or it just makes sense to me. And with our association, it makes sense to have a drop box at least as long of a period as early voting to use as drop boxes. I've had mine since we moved into our building in 2013. We've always used it. been secure right by our door, always had a camera on it. So I would hate to see our voters lose that convenience, especially when you have the, just finishing up this past election year where we saw, the highest turnout, in our careers here. People got, they didn't trust the post office. They didn't trust the mail, or at least trust how long it was going to take. So they had that other alternative here, is just dropping it off at our office. Again, I hate to see voters losing that opportunity. So that's something that, we've asked Aaron Ackerman to go back to the sponsors of the bill on, but it's something that, hearing the sponsors' feedback on it, I don't have a whole lot of hope. I just, again, I got to hope that common sense prevails, but I'm just not sure where we're going to go with that one. The online.
And can I jump in real there? Because
Yeah.
we obviously really prioritize drop boxes. You know that. It was before the primary was over last year that we realized that drop boxes were such a critical piece of this puzzle, right? And so two things. One is, just to be clear, none of us, not league, not Ohio Association of Elections Officials, like this 10-day window, right? Because that means people can't even put their registration form in there, which is a far more direct way. But can you talk about multiple drop boxes per county? We can think about urban areas with lots of people using one drop box. We can think about rural areas where someone might have to drive through multiple towns and may not even have, for example, transit to do that, that connects well. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, and I hear what you're saying there, but when I read the bill, like, we got to save a drop box for, you know what I mean? I mean, we got to save that drop box first. And then we got a whole nother controversial topic of having multiple drop boxes. So it's kind of two different things here. First, we got to solve, in my opinion, we got to solve the drop box issue of having it 24/7, 365 days a year. Then we need to add on to that and look at multiple drop boxes. Our association talked a lot about this, and it was, we supported letting the local board of elections make that decision themselves because they know themselves the best. We don't need dictated by higher ups that you need, Cuyahoga County needs, 200 boxes. I mean, each county knows what they need. And I trust that those counties can make those decisions. A smaller county like Michelle's, I know she doesn't need 20 drop boxes out there. I'm lucky in Warren County, we're centrally located. So we're living with the one ballot box. Okay. Yes, it would benefit more voters if we had them, out there in the rural areas. I think that going to the common sense approach, I mean, we can have them at police stations, fire stations, those trusted sources, those trusted entities that we already have out there. I'm in no way saying we should have them out there on a street corner like the blue box, unmonitored, just sitting there. But again, I think it's save the one box and then let's look at multiples. And
I'd like to speak on that as well. I mean, to have it be a board decision, which again, 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans, again, that know what's best for the county. I have around 32,500 registered voters. So do I need those, in each municipality? Absolutely not. But again, leave it to our boards to decide who knows our counties any better than our board, and leave that to a local decision of how many drop boxes that we each need, and have confidence in them who have been appointed by their political parties to that position on the board, that we can do that in a bipartisan way. So I agree. We want that to come back locally to the boards to decide. Again, I may need 1 or 2. Tony Perlotti needs a lot more. So, or in Summit County. So leave that up to the individual boards to be able to decide that amount. And I think the legislators should trust us in that decision.
That's great. How about early vote centers, multiple early vote centers? Would you like to see boards of elections being able to decide that too?
Absolutely. I think that the boards of election, again, and the bipartisan should decide how many they need, where they need them, where they're located. These are all decisions too that we make when assigning polling locations. I don't know that the general public knows that these have to pass ADA accessibility. The board votes on those. And sometimes the board may vote, you know, during a small election, we had actually 9 voters that were in a little small school overlap, and we had them go to a different polling location. That again has to be voted on by the bipartisan team of the board to say, yes, that other polling location is going to accept those 9 voters. So again, and I'll reiterate, they are appointed by their political party to make the best decisions for the voters of each county. So again, if they vote to have multiple vote centers, and again, the trend is going, 59% voted early absentee, whether in person or by mail. So that is the trend. And even naysayers that say we only need 1 day for elections, I tell you what, we have a lot of voters that have changed their mind and never knew it was this convenient. So if you start seeing this trend keep rising, which it's going to, and then there will be the need for early vote centers. So let's not have that be legislatively made as a big old, you know, a big old overall. Let's have each board decide what their needs are in the county.
That's really great. Thank you for that. It's good to hear your perspective. So, Brian, there's all these questions or conversation about election integrity and voter fraud and cheating. And I'm just going to say, just so people know, we have 1 Republican, 1 Democrat in their truest form of being bipartisan. We have 1 of each here with us. No need to say which one's which. By the way, we never say our party affiliations in league meetings either. People don't know about us either because our North Star is voters, just like North Star are elections for you guys and voters. But let's get to this. Voter fraud. Is it real? Is it some, you know, what do we do in Ohio to make sure that we have election integrity?
I just saw the report just a little bit ago released by Secretary LaRose. Like 117 voters, you know, that's not very many. And, you know, I've seen the cases that I've seen are people that got registered from the BMV and shouldn't have been. I've seen a lot of, you know, that error too. They didn't even know they were registering to vote. And then they voted because they were registered, you know, so they're, you know, I think they got set themselves up to, you know, vote illegally when they shouldn't have been. But you know, all these reports out there, I mean, it is discouraging to me to see the disinformation that's being put out there to try to jeopardizes what we're doing. You know, me and Michelle, I mean, we care about fair and honest elections. You know, I could not foresee how an election could be rigged in Ohio, with all the checks and balances that we have. I mean, you know, there always has to be a Democrat and Republican in the room at all times with ballots, programming, all the LNA testing that we go through with our election ballots. It wouldn't benefit anybody, either party. You know, I mean, why would one, if we're bipartisan and we have to be we're in the room at the same time, how could we rig an election? How would we, you know, what would benefit the Democrats versus Republicans? I mean, it just doesn't make any sense to me how an election would be rigged here in Ohio. I'm not speaking for any other states or their election laws. I'm doing good keeping up on Ohio, so I'd like to keep it on the Ohio laws.
And
go ahead.
I'll go ahead. Jen, I think I surprised you when I was like, well, I can't even get down to where our machines are locked. We have a physical Democrat and a Republican key.
Right.
One can't get
Right.
in without the other one. And I think when I told you that, you were like, so again, you know, and most cases that are taken to prosecution, like there's a little box on top of a registration that says, am I a US citizen? And sometimes, you know, when you're putting in thousands and thousands of registrations, somebody may miss that when they didn't check it. So that would be, again, human error. And most of these are human error. I'll tell you, the one in Auglaize County that we heard about that when I started was a mother-in-law had the same exact name as her daughter-in-law. She was elderly. She went to the precinct. She cast her ballot. They tried to get a hold of her. Her daughter-in-law went in to vote, same exact names, and said, no, I'm sorry, you'll have to vote a provisional, which that's what provisionals are for. And she voted, and then they got a hold of the mother-in-law. So she went to her correct precinct. I am in contact with my county prosecutor every week. We talk, and we joke, you know, was that prosecutable 13, 15 years ago? Absolutely not. So those are the rare cases. I believe we had almost 6 million ballots cast. And I think, Brian, actually the number was 13 non-citizens. So again, we figured that is 0.0003%. You have a better chance of getting struck by lightning twice than election fraud. So again, mis and disinformation. And we work being nationally certified, being on some of these boards. These, my colleagues do the same and have the same exact integrity that I do in my state. It's just their election laws are different. The voters here, when I say, you know, Pennsylvania only had 5 days. Well, they have 5 days for their absentees to come back in. I said, well, really? Did you realize that Ohio has 10 days? And they're just shocked. So again, it's whatever election laws are in that county. Thank goodness we can start processing our absentee ballots, getting them open, running them through a scanner, not tabulating them till 7:30 on election night, but being able to tabulate those. I think Tony Perlotti talked about getting, I don't even remember, 30,000 maybe. Can you imagine trying to tabulate those in one day after of election day? We wouldn't have had those results either until 3 or 4 days. But again, because our election laws are different, then we can run Ohio elections, and it appears it's not that we're way better than anybody, but we have our laws in place that we're able to do it effectively and efficiently.
So yeah, let's talk about what LaRose has done here, just so everyone is clear. He's identified 13 cases of non-citizens casting ballots that are now being referred for prosecutors for more investigation. So he's identified 13 cases where he thinks that's the case. In the past, secretaries of state always do this. It's always a very small amount of individuals. And usually out of that, they find that some of those folks actually were even citizens. And so this is not the prosecution of 13, this is 13 anomalies. And yes, 104 individuals who appear to be wrongfully registered to vote. And again, that might not have been, their fault. It could be a human error, but those are being investigated. Usually it ends up being, so it's a very tiny sliver if we think about the millions of Ohioans that vote every election, or the millions of Ohioans on the rolls. And then once investigations happen, very few prosecutions occur. But let's go ahead and jump in. I did want to mention to league members that we were actually champions of this bipartisan chain of custody for, taking 2 keys, or that the machines or the papers, or all the various things, because we think it just makes sense for people to be looking over each other's shoulders. So we really do appreciate that. We do have a few more questions. I think one is, and this is really special to us as leaguers, because we work really hard to be nonpartisan. It's hard in these times where everything is so partisan. And I know you've done a good job here just explaining how you work across the aisle, but can you just talk about some of the other ways that you as elections officials really work to put voters first and really preserve your reputation as being honest brokers?
Well, I can talk a little bit too. Right now, the association is now partners with Ohio Kids Vote Ohio. So we're really reaching out to the younger grades as early as maybe 3rd grade of setting up, you know, and taking our machines and picking your favorite ice cream and a curriculum. You know, this isn't going to take away from any of their curriculum they already have. This is just an addition to that. So if we start, you know, educating these, the younger generation, and then about democracy, and then when they get older, then they will be able to be poll workers, and then they'll be active voters for life. And I speak at the Rotary, and to be honest, Jen, my county is 75% Republican, 25%, maybe even, but I go to these service groups and I speak, and the questions, and again, I don't care if it's 2 in 10 people that I can convince that, you know, that the ballots aren't from Malaysia, and that you can actually see the paper ballot and watch it go through the scanner, and tell them that our machines not only are nationally certified, they're state certified as well by an examiner's board. And then we have a LNA testing, which it is an in-depth testing of a test deck that is specifically for them. Any mistake, any whoops, anything you will catch at that LNA testing. And then after you get through that, you have a public testing of your machines, and the whole process, even when you tabulate, of the public to come in and view that. And again, do you want to know how many people have came to the public test in 13 years since I've been here? 2, my mom and dad. And it's publicized, it's in the paper, it's advertised. So I would ask that I challenged our elected officials in an elected official meeting last week. We have to give a report, and I stood up and I said, you know, here are the facts. Here are the facts. Our audits were 99.9, let me look here again. I don't want to say 99.98% accurate. That means every board of election took and hand counted bipartisanly a percentage of those ballots, and they came out almost exactly as they were scanned through those machines. So I challenged our election officials, fair's coming up, you'll have your booths, your political booths at the fair. And I said, here are the facts. You as elected officials, it's your job to educate your constituents. And when you're in a booth at the fair, we know the questions, we know the things they're going to talk about, that these are the facts, and provide the facts and debunk this dis and misinformation, and work on getting the trust back for our voters.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. That was really great. We just have a few more minutes left. Lots more questions than we have time, which I love that about League, is that we're election nerds too. So we'll have to have you guys back and have Aaron back. Brian, can you talk about what what groups like the League can do?
Yeah, I think it's just help look out for voters, look out for their, you know, the voting rights. I think that, you know, it's hard for us election officials to do. You know, we're just reviewing bills, we're reviewing things that have already been proposed out there. What you can do is just, again, just be on the lookout and do stuff that, again, that makes sense to the voters, you know, leaving politics out of it. We need to leave politics out of this and do common sense voter laws. And I think more voter education. You know, I mean, you're already doing a ton, but I'm just saying, just keep doing the voter education. I think that's really important, getting the facts and the right information out.
Great.
And Jen, I don't think everyone realizes the stakeholders. You know, I don't think anybody realizes how many moving parts to this election, and what stakeholders and what it means to a certain group because they like to vote at home, or another group that, you know, may want to do souls to the polls, or another group. I spoke with the disabilities group and engaged them in being poll workers, because the poll workers, when you walk in, should look exactly like the voters, and engage them, and they engage all groups and continue to educate and do outreach. And I know we're a great partner with the League of the Women Voters. And thank you for your stakeholdering and helping us, and things with elections, because it does help us, and we do hear you as well.
This is really, thank you so much. I think that really the dialogue is where we all hopefully get smarter and have a better system for voters and for elections officials. And so just thank you so much for your partnership and for participating here today. You guys are also a stakeholder in redistricting, in that you will, once those maps are done, you'll be putting folks into their right districts now. And maybe we'll have you guys back to talk about how some best practices for educating voters once the districts have changed. But I want to thank you both again. So Michelle Wilcox, definitely my members should know her, know you, Michelle, because so many of them have watched testimony at the State House on the Ohio channel. Brian Sleeth from Warren County, we're so glad that you are joining us. We congratulate you on your upcoming role as president. And we hope that you will join us again soon. And thank you, League members, for joining us. Remember to, if you have a young person, we want them to get more involved to help us transform our organization so we're smarter, thinking about constituents. What do young voters need? You know, it'd be the best way to know is to have a whole bunch of young leaders. We have these fair districts events coming up. So the volunteer huddle, if you are a volunteer wanting to make sure we get fair maps, join us. Also, our next luncheon with the League will be with the Ohio Supreme Court Justice Maureen O'Connor. So we also have some coalition events that Michael has put into the chat. Right now, and it's so important, you can double up for democracy. We have been working for a half a century and bringing fair maps to the people. And we need your support now to make sure we can do that, to do things like running our map competition. And of course, please, if you are not a member, please become a member of the League. They also make great presents. So thank you, everyone. We hope you have a wonderful week. Lovely to start out with all of you. Thank you, Michelle and Brian.